Alrighty, free radicals, welcome back. My name is Dave, and this is the Radical Independent, your home for exclusive and very different commentary on politics and Tulsi Gabbard, as we continue to cover Tulsi. But in this video, we've got to kind of look at what happened to Bernie. And yes, I predicted this. I didn't do a video yesterday. I was kind of observing what was being said, and a lot of the neo-progressive commentators were, of course, downplaying Bernie and talking about the rigging. Funny how they weren't quite as vocal about the rigging against Tulsi Gabbard in recent weeks. And this is why people, if you're a Bernie supporter, this is why a lot of Tulsi people are really mad. Because the stuff that ended up happening to Bernie had been happening to Tulsi Gabbard at a greater, more exponential rate, because Tulsi Gabbard was crossing the streams. You know, she was saying things that were too blunt, and she was getting a lot of pushback. She was talking anti-war in real terms. She never sent a surrogate over to the New York Times to tell them that, you know, maybe if North Korea, launches a nuclear test on their own soil, maybe we need to do a preemptive strike to prevent that. Tulsi Gabbard was not saying that. Tulsi Gabbard was much more clear on things like the coup in Bolivia and the coup in Venezuela. There was no talk about Maduro and all of that, like Bernie. He's a thug, he's an autocrat. No talk about Vladimir Putin and how evil he is and so forth. The Sanders campaign obviously tried to court all of those neoliberals out there. That has failed miserably because the neoliberals, they had no intention of voting for Bernie Sanders. And also the Sanders campaign miscalculated and thought that somehow people over 40 would vote for Bernie in big enough quantities to offset the huge advantage Biden has demographically. Because it's just, this is kind of like saying, hey, this is my plateau, but I'm going to be able to, break the ceiling there. And there was no plan to break the ceiling. It was the same message. It was over and over again the same message. And quite honestly, I'm just going to put it into political terms. Bernie Sanders is a much scarier candidate than Tulsi Gabbard is in the way he presents himself versus the way she presents herself. Why do you think Biden is doing so well right now? Oh, it's rigged. Everything's rigged. Everything's not rigged. I'm sorry. This kind of, let's put it this way. These margins in states like Michigan, for instance, it's not rigged. It's not rigged. Everyone came home, and unfortunately they came home to see Uncle Joe. That's what happened. They weren't coming home to see Bernie. And Politico here says it wasn't just the results on Tuesday. It was the realization that for the first time he had no excuse and nothing better to look forward to. This is just a monumental collapse. When you look at momentum, when you look at the hype within the progressive movement about this, that finally we got this and Bernie's going to go. Who is he going to pick for a VP? Well, he ain't going to pick Tulsi Gabbard, and now he's definitely not going to pick Elizabeth Warren. Warren, everybody's going to fall in line, including Bernie Sanders. Now, you'll say to me, well, Tulsi, she's going to have to endorse Biden too. Yeah, maybe at the very end if Biden doesn't collapse of something and he's able to finish this out, because it's going to be grueling. It's going to be grueling. Do you want to send either one of these guys up against Donald Trump? I mean, Trump is, whatever you want to say about Trump, Trump's got the energy. I don't know how he does it at his age. He doesn't exercise. He eats whatever he wants to. He's one of those guys. He is overweight, obviously, but it doesn't seem to matter. And I don't know how either one of these guys are going to get on a debate stage against Trump. And I'm not saying Trump's a great debater, but Trump will say enough to just rattle these guys, and he's not afraid to say it. When he told Hillary Clinton, when Hillary Clinton was like, well, I'm glad, somebody of Donald Trump's judgment isn't in charge of the national security state or the criminal justice system or something like that. And Trump, without missing a beat, said, yeah, because you'd be in jail. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that people love, whether you like Trump or not. It was like, that's the kind of blunt talk. The other candidate that does the blunt talk but does it with the aloha is Tulsi Gabbard. And people like Anna Kasparian early on, just whether it was jealousy, whether it was just her demeanor, whatever it was the cat fight rather than trying to find out more about this candidate. She had a vision of what a progressive should be, and Tulsi Gabbard hated that. Because number one, she doesn't put herself in a box. She doesn't label. And a lot of these progressive channels that I sort of got my, my feet wet watching in the early days, they all kind of, it was like Bernie all the time. And I kept saying this, and after a while I'm like, man, but Tulsi is a much better candidate. And, well, Bernie's got resources. Yeah, well, he doesn't have the right message. Again, we can lecture the entire movement, the Democratic Socialists of America. Is that a good name for your organization? No. Green Party, I'll say this to you guys. Not everybody in the Green Party believes the same stuff, but I think you need to rework your language when you put out a platform. We're finding out that people are afraid. And whether it's justifiable fear or is it based on reality? I don't know. What I think here is that you need to frame things. And Bernie tried to do that throughout the campaign. Well, it's not a radical idea to have Medicare for all. Not a radical idea. Not radical. The problem with Bernie is the people in his organization and down the food chain on Twitter and everywhere else yelling and screaming about how awesome socialism is. The younger people in the country believe, but they don't really know what socialism looks like. And the older people know what real socialism is. And this ain't it, by the way, but rather than wasting your time explaining it all, again, this is why Tulsi Gabbard doesn't do labels, and she goes line by line, issue by issue. She's progressive on some things. She's libertarian on some other things. The notion of free speech, by the way, it can be a non-starter. Because if you don't believe in free speech, if you believe in censorship, if you believe that a contrary view on a controversial topic is hate speech, you're going to get, I tell you what, there are a lot of people on both the left and the right that are really tired of this. And this is the neoliberal order. Now, Joe Biden launched his campaign because of Charlottesville, where Trump said there are good people on both sides. And everybody thought, and CNN ran with that and said, he's endorsing neo-Nazis. No, he was actually talking about the people that believe that the Confederate statue should come down and the other people that believed it should stay. And, I guess the politically correct view now is that all these statues need to come down. And is this an issue that we should be spending or launching a campaign on? Because that's very polarizing and divisive. And even though it's moving, let the states figure this out for themselves. Federal government has no business weighing in on this. This is a 10th Amendment issue, states' rights issue. And it certainly isn't going to give anyone health care. It's not going to get us out of endless war. It's not going to increase wages to $15 an hour. It's not going to make unions stronger. It's not going to do those things that are common sense. But free speech, this is what it boils down to. Free speech is an important thing. And I think when you look at the two candidates, Bernie versus Tulsi, Tulsi's much stronger on free speech issues. Obviously, the Russiagate thing really made a lot of what I call honest progressives very uncomfortable. The Michael Tracy folks, very uncomfortable with Bernie Sanders at times. And the fact that he seems to want to distance himself from the idea that anything that has to do with America is good, all right? And that we were never good. And that, I tell you what, that plays into Donald Trump's hands in a general election. Biden kind of wears some patriotism. Tulsi Gabbard wears patriotism and isn't embarrassed by it and isn't ashamed by it. Because she knows, look, our country is bad in places, but it's not a complete train wreck. I mean, it just can't be, because there are good people in communities doing good things. And they live here. So therefore, there are some good people in America doing good things. So don't condemn the whole thing. I know, I think Michael Tracy was talking about Bernie refuses to wear like a flag lapel pin. I don't know if that's a big issue or not, but it kind of sends a message when you're not doing it. I mean, if you want America to be sort of rebuilt in your image, Bernie, you should embrace her. You shouldn't just reject everybody, because it's kind of like throwing a deplorable argument at everybody who, puts a flag on their property and so forth. I don't think everybody who puts an American flag out there is a racist xenophobe, all right? But this is the kind of stuff that has now become the norm. And I've watched, as I've been doing this for over a year, that there are a bunch of people out there who are very angry. And their anger is not proportional to the suffering going on. What you need to do is say, okay, America is good, but America can be better. And this is how I want to do it. All right? And yes, we need somebody in the Oval Office who can empathize with the American people, who relates to them, on a real personal but yet practical level. And that person's name, by the way, is Tulsi Gabbard. Best candidate still in my lifetime. And yes, she should just keep running for president until she runs out of money or somebody collapses. My guess is, here's what I think is going to happen. Bernie will go back to Vermont. He will lick his wounds. He will probably stroll before a microphone soon enough and say, look, I got beaten pretty bad. There's no path. Because he knows, number one, even if he came a little closer, that you'd have the super delegates on board for Biden. You'd have any of those Pete delegates and those, Warren delegates and Klobuchar delegates out there, and they'd all go to Biden. Because they will. And so it's the end. It's over. It's today. This is done. And soon enough, the Bernie people will go completely ape crap when Bernie says, my friend Joe, he's clearly in the lead. I don't see a path forward. So today I'm going to throw my support behind Joe Biden. And not only that, I am planning on going on the campaign trail. I need to take a little break. I'm going to just relax for a few weeks, and then during the campaign, of course, when things start to heat up, I'll be out there campaigning for Joe Biden. He's a friend. He's a good friend. And that's it. and this incredible movement that everybody has been talking about, join the movement. The movement is more like a bowel movement, all right? It's over. You've evacuated the bowels, and there's there's nothing else to do. You're done. You need to rest. You're 78 years old. You had a heart attack last year. You need to go home and rest for a little while. Now, I'm not at all trying to glamorize Joe Biden, but you could see this coming. And it shows you how broken the political system is. It shows you how empty and vacuous everything appears to be. You're going to have Trump, who's warmonger light, taking on Biden, who's warmonger full strength. I mean, Joe Biden, he's going to trust every military expert that he has in his administration to go into whatever country to do humanitarian aid and to do, regime change. And you got the one candidate who made the most sense since Ron Paul, the one candidate who made the most sense, and people are going to say, well, what's next for Tulsi Gabbard? Well, for now, Tulsi Gabbard continues to run for president. And good, because her message needs to be heard. At the very least, it needs to be heard. At the very most, you never know what's going to happen between now and the convention. You just don't know. You just stay in. Do it as an insurance policy. For, say, I'm doing the DNC a favor. In case something happens with Joe, and then people are going to start talking about Bernie maybe, but the point is, if Bernie drops out and Tulsi's still in there, Tulsi is going to gain a little bit of momentum in some of the states where now there is really no choice. If Bernie pulls out, you never know. Maybe Tulsi starts to pick up a few delegates here and there, and then goes to the convention, and she makes an incredible speech about what our country needs to do and how we need to pull different factions together. She's going to get booed probably by a lot of the conspiracy theorists out there and the Russiagators, but she's going to be a hero to the folks that believe in free speech and believe in peace. And all those other issues that Bernie campaigned on, Tulsi did as well, with varying proposals, slightly different than Bernie. And I honestly think, Tulsi's proposals were much more workable and practical, and were on paper, not just sort of this nebulous Green New Deal on a chalkboard, but actual, actionable legislation like the Off Fossil Fuels Act. That would be one. For those of you who care about the earth, that's something that you could do. For real. Not just pie in the sky Green New Deal. Because then, you're going to have to go to Congress and present a new proposal. And is that proposal going to be more watered down? Because the Off Fossil Fuels Act is pretty aggressive, and it's very specific. Tulsi has a bill for that. I know Bernie likes to say he's got a bill for that, but Tulsi Gabbard has a bill for pretty much everything. The election fraud or tampering, Tulsi Gabbard has a bill for that. But again, everybody, the neoliberals, the neoprogressives, they chose to go in a different direction. They chose to go in this direction. And their two choices were Bernie and Biden. And now Bernie, again, being kind of a worn-out old guy at this point, and Biden the same, but the difference is Bernie's not all that likable. He's just, and this is a truth that a lot of progressives don't wrap their brains around. That you've campaigned now, it seems, for like 6 years, 8 years, on this idea that everybody's angry and ticked off. And there are a lot of people that are like, whoa, wait a minute. We got angry and ticked off right now in the White House. And the people that put Trump in office, they're angry and ticked off. And eventually I'd like to get up in the morning and hear a pleasant voice on television talking about whatever topic or issue, and somebody who's articulate and somebody who might be under the age of 70. Just let's try under 70. I know that's a tall order. Tulsi Gabbard, 38 years old, and definitely has the energy and the strength and the stamina to be the president for 8 years and beyond. I know the Constitution only allows for 8, but she could probably, go for even longer. I'm sure she would say, nope, I'm done. She's not a dictator, and she wouldn't behave like a dictator. And people, they laugh and joke about Trump saying, yeah, Trump 2024, Trump 2028. People, in a way, aren't joking over on the right. They think this is just going to go on forever, that Don Jr. is going to come up through the ranks and run, and then people are going to vote for him. We need a country that works for everybody. And we're not going to get there if we polarize and we put someone out there who seems to be speaking a language that only a few folks understand. And Tulsi Gabbard had a way different approach to this. And that's why she's still around, because she thinks that her message is more important than necessarily being, the nominee. It'd be nice, because if she became the nominee and was running for president, was getting the media attention as the nominee, these issues would get out to people for the first time. And people could think for themselves and say, hey, is this a good idea? Sounds like a good idea. Tulsi's on to something. So, I don't want to make this too much longer. I'm starting to ramble, and people apparently don't like it when I ramble. At least some people don't. Thanks for supporting the channel. I know I took yesterday off here. I was watching the results and so forth, and I just figured I needed a day away from this. But please support the channel if you can. David J. Spurrier at gmx.com. That's for PayPal donations. Also, there's a link to my Patreon at the top right on the banner of this YouTube channel. Click on that, and that's a Patreon that is shared with my music channel. So don't be afraid. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in the world of music over there as well. And I do that, and I do this, and I have kids and stuff to do. So in any event, I appreciate all the support, and we are picking up a few subscribers again, because people realize now, all of a sudden, that independent truly is the way to go. It's the wave of the future, folks. And if you want to build a coalition, you got to start with independent voters, disaffected voters from maybe third parties and so forth. But here we are. You can't feel the burn today. The burn has kind of left the building. All right. See you soon.